Alright, now for the most important part of this presentation, showing exactly how to use these modifications on the tabletop. The first modification, the reinforcement rule, is designed to prevent infantry squads from being eliminated at long range. This especially makes playing smaller games much more enjoyable and dramatically increases the value of small arms. The way this rule works is by allowing squads that have suffered casualties to recover lost members. To do so, just roll 1 dice per squad. Depending upon the race of the squad, that squad will recover 1d3, 1d6, or even 2d6 members. The way this prevents squads from being eliminated at long range is by constantly reinforcing any models that were destroyed at long range. Generally, long-range weapons won't kill too many infantry at once, making it virtually impossible to destroy the squad entirely, or even really to cause that much damage at all. The Zacas system's second modification, changes to vehicle stats, is made to increase vehicle survivability, especially for small games. In small games, losing a tank or other important vehicle too early in a game can be crippling for a player's strategy. These changes help to fix that problem. There are only 2 changes, but they're significant. 1. Vehicles now receive 2 structure points, and 2. Vehicles now are cheaper to field, probably by about 25% or so, depending upon the vehicle. The third modification, new transport rules, is a big but practical change to the Warhammer 40k system. Its objective is to make transports far more useful than they've been in the past, and it accomplishes this objective by allowing infantry squads to ride both within and on top of a vehicle. Again, infantry squads may now ride both within and on top of a vehicle. Effectively, this means that transports can now move 2 small or medium-sized squads or even a really big platoon by having some members ride on the outside and some on the inside. Because it would be a nasty balancing act to stick a lot of models on top of a vehicle, just place a single model on top to represent a squad being there. But keep in mind that any attacks leveled at the vehicle will also strike the infantry on top, probably on a 4+ roll of the dice. The fourth modification, changes to ordnance, is a vital change for making small games more enjoyable. This modification ensures that ordnance doesn't dominate a game, but still remains an important support piece against monstrous creatures, vehicles, and other hard targets. Now, when firing ordnance, there are 7 steps. The first step is that ordnance now rolls to hit initially with the tank crew's ballistic skill. Next, if that fails, then the shot deviates a little by using the scatter dice. The third step is determining if the ordnance made a direct hit. If it did, then the model struck may not make any saves of any kind, not even invulnerable saves. Steps 4 and 5 involve rolling dice. D3 models are struck with an armor-piercing value of 4, and D3 models are struck with an armor-piercing value of 6. Step 6 is having the enemy roll for pinning, even if that squad didn't suffer any casualties. Soldiers are still thrown into the air, blasted to the side, etc. Finally, any vehicles hit by artillery suffer 2 damage dice instead of just 1. The Zacas system's fifth modification, changes to cover saves, is also very, very important for small games. These new rules add a surprising amount of tactical flexibility to games, too much to detail outside of a battle report, and therefore make smaller games a lot more fun to play. These changes are simple. The first is that cover saves are now taken in addition to armor saves. This change really adds some depth to deciding when to be offensive and when to be defensive. And the second change is that when models are firing at point-blank range, either side can only benefit from a 6+ cover save and no more. This encourages a lot of really cool tactics like toe-to-toe gunfights. Now, the Zacas system's sixth modification, the alternative system for movement and range finding, is probably the most important of all the modifications. The reason for that is because this modification cuts out as much of the misery of using the measuring tape as possible, and therefore greatly increases game speed and fun. The way this system works is very simple. To move a squad, just select a single soldier, probably the closest to wherever you want that squad to go, and move him using the measuring tape. Then, just range all the other models behind or to the sides of that first model, regardless of how far the other models move. The new way to determine range finding, who can shoot in a squad and how many times, is determined by using the position of the closest model to the selected enemy. So, in effect, even if a squad only has 1 model within 12 inches of the enemy, now the entire squad can still rapid fire with 2 shots. Inadvertently, therefore, these new rules also make small arms a lot more useful. The seventh modification, the changes to the HTH combat system, was designed to increase the amount of strategic and tactical flexibility available in games, and also to increase game speed. The effects of this rule are shown in order of importance. First, models may now be shot at while in close combat, but rolls of 1 will strike friendly models. With this rule, players will be able to handle giant swarmer squads, like Tyranids, without having to jump into close combat with them. This is especially valuable because Tyranids are one of the armies that recover 2d6 soldiers per squad. Second, the 2-inch kill zone has been done away with. Now, squads may strike from anywhere to anywhere in the enemy squad. This rule was originally made to save time, but it also encourages assaults, especially in small games. Third, models or squads adjacent to an assaulted squad may opt to join the combat. This rule is designed so that command squads or HTH specialists can sit behind the front lines and counter-assault. Fourth, any attacks aimed at a specific model, like an independent character, only hit on a 6+. This is to increase the survivability of important battlefield characters, especially since they can't be recovered like normal members of a squad. And finally, fifth, models may benefit from having the AP value of their best ranged weapon. For instance, plasma gunners may strike an HTH with an AP value of 2, but they still keep their normal strength. This represents maybe struggling over the gun with an opponent. The eighth modification, new rules for frag and crack grenades, actually makes grenades useful on the tabletop. There are 2 simple changes. 1. Enemy models within 6 inches of a friendly unit armed with frag grenades suffers a -1 to cover saves. This represents friendly models lobbing grenades at the enemy to force them out of cover. 2. Crack grenades may now be used in close combat, making a single attack per model and striking on a 6+. This rule was inspired by the rules for Tyranid hunters in the back of the Space Marines Codex. Alright, the ninth and last modification of the Zacas system is various changes to the armies and equipment of Warhammer 40k. These rules might be controversial and prone to some changes, but they're designed with the intention to better represent the armies and races of the 41st millennium. The first change is, obviously, getting rid of the Eldar Guardian. A dying race is not going to have a cannon fodder unit, and a race like the Eldar will never, ever have an armor save worse than 4+. The idea of elves commonly dying in droves just seems absurd. Second, Necrons should be downgraded to toughness 3, but be able to retest for resurrection on each turn. This is made to balance out the reinforcement rule available to the other races, but keep the Necrons from being overpowered at the same time. Third, Sisters of Battle should only have a 4+ armor save. The super heavily armored races like Space Marines, Chaos Marines, and Necrons, they should really be unique in that way on the battletop, having the heaviest armor. Some of the proposed changes to equipment are made to modify the usefulness of certain items, and more importantly, to adjust their usefulness after some of the changes made by the Zacas system. The most obvious piece of equipment to modify is the power weapon. Because plasma guns can now negate armor saves, the power weapon needs to have some kind of advantage that those guns don't. An obvious solution is to grant power weapons +1 strength. A second piece of equipment that should be modified is the Stormbolter. Since the Stormbolter is just 2 pistols put together, it doesn't make sense that this weapon should have a 24-inch range. Instead, it should just operate like 2 pistols firing simultaneously. Hopefully, as others playtest the Zacas system, they'll come up with other pieces of equipment that can and should be modified. Now, just a few final words. To recap, all of these modifications were made to renew a lot of lost interest in Warhammer 40k by improving 4 main areas of the game. These modifications address these 4 main areas by 1. Better portraying the armies and races of Warhammer 40k, 2. Making small arms useful and vital to winning games, 3. Making smaller games much more attractive to play, and 4. By decreasing the amount of time necessary to play a game. Thank you for watching, and to see the Zacas system in action, please view our battle reports.